So yeah, this one may be a bit jumpy because of the wind. It's quite wild here at the moment. A little bit milder, but the wind is biting and icy. Oh, is that done? But I'll keep going. You're not here for a weather report. As you can see, the video is based all around his Dark Materials, which is a book by Philip Pullman. That was adapted. This is about the TV series. I have read the first book, but I'm not talking about the books. I wanted to finish the series first and then read the books after, because of the Game of Thrones kind of fiasco. Whereas if you read the books first, you end up absolutely anyway. Yep, the wind's calmed a little bit again. Nope. So yeah, the wind, I think, has nope. I think it's quite possible my voice triggers the wind. Who knows? Maybe I'm God. Anyway, what's the kind of premise behind them? It's like a modern look. I believe they're aimed at younger folk, maybe not children, but like younger folk. I'd have appreciated something like this, being me now, when I was in my youth. But it's basically about a kind of more modern scientific look at the universe and the idea of what existence is and all sorts of things like that. And it also takes a look at religion as a whole, not any specific religion, but kind of the idea of it in a kind of modern society, a modern enlightened society. And to be fair, it's all about string theory and the crossing of different alternative universes and all of that, which is in itself is quite fascinating, isn't it? But the idea that obviously there's these religious wars and kind of the voyage for the truth and discovery, and when people kind of become more enlightened and discover the truth, the kind of ruptions that causes through the world, and the people who fight back about it, such as it wasn't Copernicus, it was before Copernicus, wasn't it? Who was it? I don't know. The person who said that actually the earth revolves around the sun caused big kind of scandals back then, isn't it? Darwin with his theory of evolution, which was based on scientific fact and not the fact. Well, some book written by humans, that's a collection of fable stories, half of which aren't in there because they contradict each other, was kind of put together. So yeah, evolution caused a bit of a scandal, didn't it? 1 minute. Yeah, the dog was quite a bit behind there. Go on. So yeah, what am I waffling on about? It's just a book about this kind of alternate realities, alternate universes, travelling in between them. And there's one special character who's needed to be the key to unlock all of the true knowledge, the actual fact, and that's Lyra. Don't need to waffle. This is a very long introduction, but if you're not familiar with it, that's what it's about. And also, just a kind of addendum, an added bit. For some reason, this is called the Golden Compass in America. I have literally no idea. I can't fathom why. And also, the thing that it might be talking about, I don't think I've seen the film version of that for a long time. It's not a compass. It's a alethiometer or something like that, which is this kind of thing that turns. Lyra can read it. Later on, she's not the only one who can kind of read it. And she just kind of thinks, and it tries to guide her towards what she's thinking about. It's not a compass. So why it's called the Golden Compass? I don't remember a compass in the whole thing. I don't remember a compass in the books. So whatever. But it's his Dark Materials anyway. And to you American folks, for no apparent reason, the Golden Compass. Right, so I'll crack on. So the kind of main character of the story is Lyra Belacqua, Lyra Silvertongue. The silver tongue thing I'll cover later. I'm going to just give you a brief introduction to her and like what she. So obviously it starts off, she's quite a curious kind of lass. She gets up to no good, has a bit of mischief. She's quite rebellious, to be fair. She doesn't really know about who her parents are and stuff, and she discovers quite early on her father is actually her uncle is actually a father. That's Lord Asriel, who's really a very pivotal character. But she was conceived during, I think they had an affair or whatever, and obviously that was kind of hidden and hushed up. But she does discover that quite early on, and you kind of watch her journey with her friend, and that people are starting to hunt her down. And she goes to her mother. We'll try not to talk about mum too much, who kind of wants to give her to the kind of religious order, let's call them. And because she's a danger, because they realise there's a prophecy about her and all of this, and it kind of develops from her realising you can't always trust adults, even your mother. So she kind of goes on the run. She's protected by some like Normo folks, the peasants, who are the Egyptians, who are like a semi-nomadic people who just kind of live life simply, etc. Don't know if you can hear me because of the wind. I may have to start all this one again, but yeah. Anyway, then she meets I'll insert name. He's a character I need to be in it, and he sort of journeys because she loses her best friend. He gets kind of kidnapped because they go to her uncle, her dad, Lord Asriel, for safety. But we'll come to him more. But he's very determined, and he's thinking of the greater good more than what's morally correct, perhaps, which we'll cover a bit when we come to it. But yes, he ends up killing her best friend, not in a kind of sinister way, but obviously that breaks her, and then she meets the other chap and they become close, etc. And then as the story goes, basically it's her turning from a wide-eyed child into a kind of more sort of a curious young adult who's quite pivotal and quite independent minded and all of that jazz. Really hard to pick a fragrance for her because I had lots of ideas, but I've gone for April Aromatics Lotus Rising. One for the name, I suppose, the way the lotus kind of grows, doesn't it? Kind of grows out of the river, out of the earth, and blossoms into a flower. I'm very uncomfortable saying that word. She blossoms into an adult. That's a bit, that's a bit pre, sort of modern standards to say that, isn't it? But yeah, she kind of births into a fully grown adult, doesn't she, eventually? And where her true powers and her true kind of place in the universe becomes known. But also the fragrance itself, it starts very earthy, very muddy, and as the fragrance develops, it becomes clearer and more of a beautiful floral, and it's so calm, and it's just hard to describe. It is like ascending beyond the universe, and again it kind of fits that kind of her role as, well, she's Eve. I didn't mention that, did she? They call her Eve, which is a bit confusing because surely she'd be Lilith, not Eve. But anyway, she's called Eve because she's the one who starts the change, opens the universe so that people understand, what's going on, and kind of saves everything from being enveloped by these wannabe gods, self-appointed gods that aren't really, if you get what I mean. I'll go into that a bit later. But yeah, that's what she becomes, and it's very kind of, she transcends all the universes, such as the kind of lotus does. And a lotus is quite what's the word for it? Quite not religious, that's not the word I'm looking for. Spiritual flower, let's call it. It's not the word I'm after, but spiritual. It's quite important in Eastern religions and stuff because of its beauty and that. And anyway, that's a very long waffle, but I just think it suits Lyra. There were lots of other ideas. Lyra has, I mean, again, it could be part of this fragrance. She does have certain darker elements in her, which she no doubt gets from her mother and her father, actually. She's kind of, yeah, and a lotus, you don't, whenever I've seen it, I've never seen one in real life, but whenever I see them, you know, online and stuff, well, it's quite solitary creatures, plants. And again, that kind of suits, because of her place in it all. She becomes quite a solitary but very divine important person. So yeah, that's Lyra and April Aromatics Lotus Rise. That's quite beautiful, isn't it? So next we're just trying to not waffle on. I'm gonna come to Mrs Coulter, who's Lyra's mum. As far as I know, her kind of backstory is she's, again, quite like Lyra, very independent minded. She kind of I believe she lived in where Will's the boy lived in like our kind of universe for a bit with someone. She then married a politician who was like I believe he was a great part of the magisterium, but she had an affair with Asrial, which Lyra was conceived. And obviously this is quite shocking and what have you, but she becomes quite set in the part of the magisterium, but that's very misogynistic, very men driven, isn't it? And she that's how she starts to develop, as quite a calculating, manipulative kind of character. Obviously the child is taken off her and it's all hushed up and all of that. I do think she loved Asriel. Certainly that becomes apparent in the series kind of later on. And the child was conceived with a lot of love, and I think both sad about it. But she does also develop quite a love. Lyra's her vulnerability, Lyra's her weakness, Lyra's the thing that changes her. But yes, she develops to be quite calculating, quite, what's the word, ambitious, and that, to get as much power as any woman could have in this religiously zealot dominant world that she lives in. And plus she's seen the other world, she's seen how different things can be and all of that. Anyway, she kind of comes into it. You never quite really know where she's going. And ultimately she's working to separate the children from the demons, because the demons are corruptive. I didn't really talk about the demons, did I? The demons are like your living soul, if you like, in the form of an animal. And it's not decided till you become an adult as to what form they stay as, what represents you. And they are kind of like the inner voice, if you like, that we all have. We all have one, but in the different planes of the universe, we can't necessarily see them because we don't believe in them. Anyway, hers is a mute monkey, and her demon's quite special in the fact that I believe they were separated, but he can move away. They can be separated, like separate distances and all this sort of stuff, which the other demons can't really be, especially when the people are young. Anyway, she wants to separate the demons to purify the children and what have you, some magisterium kind of thing. I don't know, like it's like in the old days where masturbation would lead you to being Hitler. you know, whatever, that kind of nonsense that came out of religions. And obviously she meets Lyra and she wants to do it for Lyra from the goodness of her heart. She wants Lyra to be like her, and kind of as free as she could be, but powerful. But then obviously there's the prediction of what she's going to become and stuff, and that kind of scares her a bit. She's very, even early on, she's very divided, I think. I'm not sure she believes in all the religious nonsense, but she does what she does for power, doesn't she? And yeah, she kind of manipulates Lyra a lot, and Lyra gets away with her. But as the story develops and develops, she does start to see what she's been doing and feel a certain amount of guilt. But because she's such a beautiful, strong woman, she knows one of her strongest benefits is the fact she can pretty much manipulate men. Again, I'm trying to so I can talk about each character separately. But obviously, a relationship with Lyra is quite important. And as it gets towards the end, she does realise she loves Lyra, and that is a vulnerability she does not want. She does not want to care for her daughter, because ultimately it stifles her ambition, doesn't it? But by the end, no spoilers, if you haven't seen it, well, tough, the books have been out years, she sacrifices herself. She uses that manipulation and that coldness and that calculatingness to deceive the great, whatever he's called. I can't remember, I will come to it. He's a regent, whatever that serves in heaven. I'm going to cover the angels as a separate thing, because I think I will cover them all with that. I think we'll send them as well. But yeah, anyway, waffle. Because of this kind of complexity, I think she's my favourite character. Come on, of course she is. Because of that complexity, that darkness, that very dark side of her, that cold, calculating power that she has. Obviously, I've got to go for a darker scent, and I've gone for Tom Ford's Tuscan Leather. Now that, as opposed to ombre leather, has the raspberry running through it, and quite a prominent raspberry. They're not that, and it also has more rough edges. It's not just a smooth, classy, silky kind of, beautiful woman on the outside, confident, powerful. It's also got them rougher edges, her delicacies, the fact the things she's prepared to do to get her way and to be in control are quite, And then the raspberry, the sweetness, but that kind of red sweetness is the danger about her. Yes, she is very seductive, she is very beautiful, she's very powerful. And it's that side of her that makes her who she is, like as a whole character, and that's maybe I'm seduced by that kind of part of her character. So I think all in all, it's a perfect one for it. I'm not going to waffle on more because I obviously could. So for Mrs Coulter is Tom Ford's Tuscan Leather. So next kind of main character is Lord Asrial, Blackquill, which is Lyra's dad, and obviously Marissa's sort of ex. Now he's probably, with her, he's probably my favourite. Very complicated character and a very driven character. He's like the Copernicus, if you like, of his age, where he's seen through all the religious nonsense, and he's kind of discovered what dust really is, and he travels through the different universes, creates new technology to do this and all that. And he's seen that the way his world is ruled is wrong by this religious order, that the what's it called? It'll come to me at some point, but the magisterium, basically, the religious order, is actually all a load of claptrap, and the thing they consider as God, which again, it'll come to me what they call him, is merely just an angel, just another being, and that it's all nonsense. So obviously he's interested in bringing all this down, and so they can live free and wondrous and discover science and all things like that. So yeah, he's a really good person, but he's also ruthless is not the right word, but he will stop at nothing. There's no sacrifice he wouldn't make in pursuit of freeing his world from these people. even at one point says he's quite willing and prepared to sacrifice his own daughter, his own blood for it, which is when he kills Lyra's little friend. He doesn't really think twice about it, because he just sees the bigger picture, the greater good, as he sees it. There's no right or wrong, obviously. Is he as bad as them for being so callous? You can't make an omelette without breaking eggs, I suppose, if you look at it from that point of view. But he's very admirable, he's very honourable, he's and just set in his ways. I suppose I can relate to that quest for real knowledge, not just the crap that we're force-fed and supposed to accept and believe. So yeah, he's obviously also a great guy and a great communicator. He brings a lot of people together on that world, a lot of the different what do you call them, species or whatever, the angels and the witches and such like, together to bring them down. So yeah, he's kind of he's a great man, isn't he? The fragrance I've chosen for that one is from Mirad's, and it's called Pendragon's Heart, which is from our Fab Trends Mia, and created by Miguel Matos. So as you can imagine, it's not your kind of average scent. It's primarily a tobacco scent, but there's lots of different nuances from the tobacco, from the dark, the smoky, the dry, golden, like it's just very beautiful. And I think it's perfect for Asriel, because it obviously the sitting smoking a cigar, kind of pondering or having a pipe, you know, that kind of thing we'd associate with some sort of aristocratic academic type person. So there's that side of it. It's also the fact he's quite cool, so you know, he'd be a smoker, wouldn't he, with his whiskey and whatnot. And also it's not all of just that, it's the darkness in there, the kind of darker side of him, the completely driven side. And there is a kind of tender brightness in there, and that's ultimately what he's trying to do. He's trying to free the world from the tyranny, isn't he? So I just think it's a really good one. Just trying to go past, don't need to what's the word, waffle on, do I? So that's Lord Asriel, and that's Pendragon's Heart from Mirad's Perfume. So the next one is Serafina Pekkala, and she's like the queen of the witches. She's a really important one, and the witches are they're a very close group. They're all very connected and all very empathetic and that. And obviously they're separate. They were hunted down by the magisterium as well, so they kind of don't hide away, but they keep away from them all, because obviously they're not religious zealots. And her role throughout the story is to kind of bring it all together, to make the prophecy come true and all of that jazz. So she needs to bring Will and Lyra together. She needs to get Mary the serpent and stuff. And the same with the angels. They all kind of have a hand in ensuring the prophecy comes true, because obviously they want an end to this, because the magisterium have nearly wiped out the witches and all of that. So she's not in it enough, but her kind of backstory is she has a deep connection to, like, just call them humans, the people anyway, because she had a relationship with one of them who is in the series. I don't know how much of this is in the books, but yeah, she has a relationship with him and they have a child together, but obviously the child's quite hunted down and not so popular because of the world they live in. But the child also, I believe, dies quite young and that, so that obviously puts even more of a strain on them. So yeah, the witches also have demons, like I say, everyone has demons, and hers can like fly away to drop messages and keep an eye on stuff, etc. But yeah, what I've picked for her, I'm not going to waffle on, is Fawn from Thomas O'Brien, Ouch 110. And the reason I've picked that is because these are kind of what you mean by witches. There are people who use nature and herbs and them sorts of spells. There's nothing particularly dark about them or what have you. And Fawn is like what today is, although I see it has been a bit damper and a bit warmer, like a spring or autumn forest. You kind of get these damp, woody, green, but fresh smells. It's quite beautiful, really. And I'm not sure if there are any aromatic kind of herby notes, but it has that kind of feel about it, where you can imagine just walking through the woods, like where the witches would chill and do good stuff and all of that. Absolutely, I'm not going to waffle anymore. So that's the Seraphina Peccola is Thomas O'Brien's fault. Next up, he's not a main character. I'm not even sure what his name is, but he can personify the magisterium, if you like. And that's the Cardinal Father, and the magisterium as a whole is like this ultra extremist zealot. I keep using the word zealot, don't I? But this kind of mentally religious group that want to keep the world with their rules and their kind of religion. It's also highly misogynistic, only men and what have you. And what's her face? Marissa helps him get to power, to get rid of the old one who wasn't quite as insane as he is. But anyway, he takes over, and their job is to make sure they worship that, whatever it is, the angel in the sky, their God, and follow his rules and his ways, not to question or blasphemize against science and things like that. Is all blasphemy and nonsense. And ultimately, I like the character. You don't know whether he does flagellate himself and stuff. He is proper hardcore, so there is a bit. He is deeply religious. I think he does deeply believe in all this nonsense, even with the contradictions, and I suspect that's the flagellation is due to the contradictions in his head and him thinking about it. You know, that old double think thing, isn't it? It's not true, it's not true, it's, you know, this is what I've been told, so that's true, kind of thing. And I think he does enjoy the power, and he sees there's more and more power. Gets a bit kind of crazy, but I truly do think he's doing what he thinks is right, to keep the world like that and to pay tribute to their religion. And what I've picked for him is Un Son Suave from Matière. Now I was thinking about this a lot, because maybe what makes him tick is maybe, I mean, it's nasty and it's wrong and it's terrible religious extremism, but he does believe it's right, and he believes he's serving his gods and religion and stuff. So it can't be too dark. Now, if you know this fragrance, it's there's a nice sharp black coffee, which is the darkness in him. Like Asriel, he's going to do what he needs to do to preserve his beliefs, etc. He's just the other side of the coin, and also then obviously there's a side of him that wants to keep his power and that, and obviously how he took power. So there is that darkness of the coffee, but also the Un Son Suave is quite an airy, fresh, bright incense, I suppose, in some ways, and that obviously represents that religious side of him, the side he thinks he's doing right, and that they are doing right. But yeah, is it just to stay in power? But no, I do think some of the people truly believe their nonsense and don't want it not to be true, because they'd lose power then, wouldn't they? But anyway, yeah, that's the Cardinal Father, Magisterium as a whole, the Un Son Suave from Matière. Next, I was going to do the King Polar Bear, but I'm not going to. He's the one who gives Lyra the nickname Silver Tongue, because obviously she helps save them in the big battle and stuff. But anyway, I've gone to the angels. Now the angels, there's just not enough about them in the series. Are absolutely fascinating. Obviously they split into two kind of factions, and there's the loyalist factions to the, I will remember this by the end because I'll have to look it up when I get in. Whatever the god is, they know that it's not him, it's a regent that's taken over, and the regent is very extremist, very wanting everyone to bow down and worship him and what have you. So they've kind of split into two groups who want to get rid of this kind of tyrant, and then another group who want to kind of keep that going, stay in power, etc. So what particularly one group of the angels and one particular angel contacts Mary Malone. That's how they do it, through the dust, but they contact her in a way through like a computer analysing the dust, which is really quite an interesting kind of modern twist on it. And by the end she meets her and see that she's been directing and helping her to make the prophecy of Lyra Eve come true, etc. So that's really quite interesting. Then there are the other angels who are there to protect the magisterium and the religious extremism at all costs. They never kill each other, but there is a battle and they do start killing each other, which is quite horrific. They're angels, aren't they, after all? They both believe they're right, and they both, one wants the tyranny and the control of being gods and what have you, and the others want to be free, and everyone to be free and to live how they want to, etc. So it's really quite interesting. Again, I'm not going to waffle on too much, although I could, as you can imagine I love them. But for them, I think it's a fragrance I've kind of picked before for something, but that's Dior's Bois d'Argent. It's my cloud fragrance, isn't it? It's a white silvery grey cloud, and what better to represent the angels? Also with that white and the grey is the mixture of the dark and the light, isn't it? Which the angels kind of are a mixture of both. And it just, obviously the fluffy clouds in the sky, that kind of weird vision we have of heaven being bouncing about in the clouds, etc. So I think it just works. And obviously Bois d'Argent, with what it means, obviously, is it woods, silver woods? There is a connection to nature and the earth and where everything comes from, and obviously the angels have a very deep connection to the earth, to everything that lives and grows. So yeah, that's why. I'm not going to waffle on. That's Bois d'Argent for the angels. So next up is a really important character that there's just not really enough about again, and that's Mary Malone. Mary, who is the serpent. Mary comes into it, does she come in the first season? And she's in, no, it must be the second season, obviously, isn't it? And she's kind of a university lecturer, and she's kind of studying stardust. I can't remember what we call it, but whatever. She's just like studying dust, and it's kind of her thing, and she thinks there's a lot more about it and that. Anyway, she comes across Lyra, who kind of unlocks it for her, if you like, and she overcomes that whatever's making her struggle with it. And then she kind of communicates with the dust, communicates with her over the computer in like waves and stuff, and she realises that it's talking to her. It does talk to her, I think. And that turns out that's actually one of the angels. Anyway, Mary's kind of becomes part of it, and she kind of gets guided to go on this journey with her, to look out for Lyra and the other lad. Is it Lee? What is it? It's not Lee. I bloody know what he's called. Will. I don't know what's wrong with me, with my brain. And yeah, she does that, and she doesn't really understand what her purpose is, what her job is. She kind of follows the journeys, follows the guide of where she's been told to go, and she has certain tasks to complete, and she ends up in a sort of world where there is sort of talky elephant things who need her to kind of see the dust and see what's happening to sort it out. And that's where she builds the amber spyglass, which makes it able to see all the dust around, and she can see the dust is leaving the world. A lot to do with the magisterium, but the sort of walking between the worlds is also I'll come to that next, but there's also sort of making the dust leak out, and only really Lyra could do this, and she's not told much. But anyway, she tells a story to Will and Lyra, and it ends up kind of getting them together, and that's kind of what the world's been waiting for. I suppose Eve being led, is it stuff to be led astray or any nonsense like that? But it's her becoming a woman, isn't it, ultimately, Lyra, with the romancy stuff. And anyway, that kind of releases, or the dust starts to return and the world starts to settle and all of that. Just 1 second. Sorry, dog there. And yeah, so she's really more important than the story like gives her much credit for, and that. And her reward at the end is she meets the angel who's been communicating with her, and she gets to see her demon, which is, I can't remember, is it a little tiny bird, is it a wren or something? Do you know what, I really can't remember. But anyway, that's by the by. She gets to see that, and all is well, and she goes back to studying and exploring and etc. Anyway, what I've picked for her, it had to be it needed to be a big scent, not something kind of demure or meek or whatever, because she's such a big person, and I picked for that Amboise's portrayal. I've picked that because she has got that kind of old-fashioned kind of values. She had a tough time with the church as well, and she fell in love with a fellow student who was a woman, and you know, back in her day, you know what the church is like. God makes us to love anyone we want to love. He creates you in his own image. Just don't love the people we tell you not to love, or else. So she gave up on all that and moved into science. So there's a little bit of a kind of similarity between her and Asriel with that. Anyway, I'm waffling on and on and on. Portrayal, big jasmine scent, got the lovely tobacco running through it, a little bit of darkness and a little bit of, well, it's not a darkness, it's a kind of wispy incense, you know, mystical kind of touch in it, and I just think it suits her perfectly. She was like kind of an outgoing lass, that sort of person. Anyway, that's it. It's waffled on far too long. For Mary Malone, the serpent is Amboise's portrait. Last but not least, again, probably the second most important character in the story is Jack Will, and he's just he does, you get more about him in the second season because it was so rushed and there's not much. For such an important character, and I think they kind of mute his character a bit. He doesn't say or do a lot. Anyway, he's ultimately there. Well, he starts his journey because he's on a quest for his father. His father's gone missing. His mum's losing her marbles a bit, and he's struggling. He has to grow up really quickly to look after her and kind of be the man of the house or whatever, you know, the person who's kind of the most responsible there. And he tries to do his schoolwork and that. He's a really bright lad. Anyway, he kind of stumbles across the other place looking for... He's wanted to discover his dad, who travelled to the other worlds, and his dad's a really important character. I'm not going to go into it too much, but his dad is very important. So yeah, and he's quite in danger because obviously the magisterium don't want him. They understand his importance and that, so they don't want him going here and there. So and they're looking for the stuff about his dad, how he managed to live in both worlds and what he was up to and stuff. Anyway, he accidentally kills someone in self-defense, so again he grows up massively, and then he goes to a world, and eventually his responsibility is to be the knife bearer. Now the knife cuts holes to travel between the worlds. I'm not going to go too much into that again because that's quite long-winded, but to get the knife he has to go through a sacrifice as well, where he loses his fingers, and also there's these mystical kind of ghoulish wraiths in this world who, once you become an adult of a certain age, they start to want to hunt you down, and they start to go towards it because he's becoming a man. He's a little bit older than Lyra, but anyways, it's hard to. He's like a big brother partner. I suppose it develops more than that, but he is very caring about. He cares about his mum and stuff, and yeah, ultimately he finds out the knife doesn't really matter, and he's got to destroy the knife, and he can never go back through the world or see Lyra again, which is the kind of bittersweet ending to the whole thing. It's quite moving actually, quite very well done, that it didn't just end in a whole happily ever after sort of thing. But anyway, what have I picked for him? Again, it's such a... Went through loads of fragrances. I just thought, do you know what? One of them fragrances that is that transition from youth into adulthood kind of thing. It's Coco Mademoiselle, isn't it? It's very popular around that age group. Obviously it's popular to get older and stuff, but it is that kind of, I suppose it's that one of them first ones that's like your first proper fragrance, perfume and what have you. And it's got the sweet grown up rich fruits in there, which is kind of symbolic, I guess, and the patchouli, which is obviously a little bit of the darkness and that Will has to carry, you know, that he's killed people, and you know, that's a lot to carry for someone so youthful and that, isn't it? So I'm not gonna ramble on. I wish I could say more about Will, but I feel like, I don't know, I mean, I'm sure I've seen the actor in other things actually. I don't think he was quite as muted, but again I suppose it's because they had to base the whole thing around Lyra, and he doesn't get much of a saying, but he's a very likeable character despite that, and a very noble and brave kind of etc. So yeah, for Will is Coco Mademoiselle from Chanel. And as we can see now, the night is getting dark and that. Some of the characters just don't have I've not said enough, and I feel quite, you know. And there were other characters like Lorik, the polar bear, Lee Sosby, is it, or whatever, who's like a really important character. There's a few I've left out, but obviously this doesn't need to be 4 hours long and what have you, does it? So that's why particular they're not there. I will go to reading the books. Does that mean there may be another video one day? Potentially. I mean, discovered this problem with the Game of Thrones thing, didn't I? Because the books are my basis. Then going to the series, and it all starts to blend, but all the good stuff comes from the books, and yeah, so I don't know. I'm waffling, aren't I? It's a really good story, and it's good to see that this is aimed at youthful folk, because it's such a different, you know, it's not fantasy stories, no happy endings and all that tripe, and it kind of opens their mind to not always believe what we've been told for thousands of years is necessarily the case. I mean, the Buddhists believed for many thousands of years in the idea of the multiple universes living on different planes, different things on and stuff, and the stardust, the kind of essence of life that we all come from and everything comes from. So there is that kind of knowledge about in our society now, and obviously science is taking that idea more and more seriously, isn't it? So yeah, it's just about being curious, asking questions, not always believing what's given, and also challenging what's given. Not, I have all respect for all faiths and that, but a faith is surely dead if you don't ask questions, if you just accept what you're told and don't challenge it and don't ask why, what have you, and all of that. That's if there is a God, that God or whatever supreme being has programmed that into us to ask these questions and be curious and not stand still. Anyway, that's my opinion. I don't know why I'm rambling on. Thanks for watching this exceptionally long video. Anyway, have you seen this series? Do you have any favourite characters? How would you send them? Do you think there's any other good kind of modern stories and that? Right folks, thanks and bye.